The Art of Less. Interview with Neil Curran.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Neil.
How are you?
Good. Welcome in Warsaw.
No, thank you. So you can travel so fast nowadays.
Yes, that's really cool. I first time, no, or maybe second time, you're in the same as my interview in the same time zone.
Yeah, yes, that's a nice treat. Hang on, I put my headset in here. Yeah, it's nice to not have to work out the time zone.
Yeah. Sometimes I meet my interviewees and they have a morning and I have a night or opposite
Yeah,
way around.
yeah,
We are together today in the same time zone.
which is nice, which is nice. No more messing with calendars. It's just what time is good for you is good for me.
Yeah. Uh, Neil, nice to see you because we haven't seen for such a long time and we've met like pretty long first time, like I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Back in the good old days when we could hug and we could
Yeah,
stand close to people and we could talk to them without
and
covering our
yeah, and
faces.
meet on the festival.
Yes, things like that. Those were the good old days. Sorry, I'm just going to clear my tears from my eyes. Sorry, I get very
Oh,
emotional.
yeah. I just have a thought today when I was thinking of it that we've met first time on the festival, which also when I talked to Jay Sukov, we had in mind that was such a bunch of great shows because you were there. There was Maydays, and like every show we've seen that festival was like really great.
It was
So,
Barcelona.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
Barcelona at Big Eve.
yeah.
So I will come back to it because I want to talk about your show, which was also there. But this is in a second.
Yes, okay. Fair enough.
uh, let's start from the beginning because what I'm interested in is that I like to ask people how they started. How was the improv when you started, and if you were involved, or if you are involved in acting, if you started with acting first or improv or both in the same time.
Sure.
So how was your beginning? How was your improvising?
So, my mother is an actor. Well, she's retired, so she is an actor, and so I grew up immersed. My dad was the businessman, my mom was the actor, so
Mm-hmm.
I grew up immersed in that. But as a child, we take things for granted. Whatever your parents do is just normal.
Mm-hmm.
So while my mother was getting, rave reviews about theatrical, she worked on the stage, the plays she was doing. I just assumed that was all normal. So I took part in a lot of children's and teenage drama, and improvisation was a huge thing with kids and drama. Not the improv that we know and love on stage, but more drama based.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be purist dramas and actors out there going, "There's no difference, Neil." Well, I say there is. So there was a lot of that, but also as a teenager, Whose Line Is It Anyway was on
Yeah.
British TV, and I loved it. It was my favorite TV show. And I used to play those games with friends without having any idea about yes and or anything like that. So we would just recreate those games and play those games, and that was a real love of mine. I watched the early series of Whose Line Is It Anyway when there was just a British cast. I think it's mostly stand-up comedians, and it was very serious. You should watch the first season. It was very serious, and I always loved that. There was something, because I was quite shy as a child. I was very introvert, and improv was just certainly in those classes. Having to improvise was just something where an adult wasn't telling me I was doing something right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because this is Ireland, very Catholic country at the time. I don't know, is it still? But right and wrong, good and bad, that association. So there is a fear associated with getting things wrong. You want to please your parents, you want to please your teachers, so you conform. Yet here comes improvisation, where that's out the window, where your freedom to express is totally on you. There's
Mm-hmm.
no wrong way, and that's quite liberating. And there's something infectious about that to a child who enjoys playing. Um, so when I grew up and got a real job, um,
What was it? What kind of job did you have?
I wanted to work in the film industry. I studied film when I left school. I wanted to work in the film industry, and I had a particular love for editing. But one of the rules in the college was you couldn't act in front of the camera. You could do anything you wanted related to film production. You just couldn't act. So there was no improv there. But I guess I wanted to get back into theatre as an adult and start doing that, take that more serious. And I set up a theatre company in Dublin, and we used improv as a tool. I recognized that there was a huge market, not market, that's the wrong word because it wasn't a business, but there was a huge appetite amongst adults to get into theatre, or people who were actors, you know, in their younger years wanted to get into it. So there wasn't really a theatre company that was fulfilling that. So I set up a theatre company with a couple other people with strict rules. We had weekly drop-in workshops, which was something that wasn't being done in Dublin at the time, and it was open to adults. And we put a rule on ourselves that we wouldn't stage theatre plays, theatrical productions that were related to anything that was going on in school, because I recognized that, you know, I loved going to the theatre, but my friends didn't. Well, not that they didn't, they just didn't go. They'd rather go watch a crap Hollywood movie in the cinema and spend more money than go and see a live stage play. And I started to realize it was because there was nothing relevant from there. There was nothing that connected. A lot of the great Irish playwrights, a lot of their work, again, this is where the purist actors are going, well, that's not the right thing to say. But a lot of Irish playwrights have fantastic work, but it's some of that work is disconnected from the reality, from the life that young people live. So, and there wasn't a lot of theatre companies that were kind of doing that connection. So we had this rule of none of that. We will stage, you know, work that's relevant and can attract an audience of any particular generation. So we used improv as it was a primary teaching tool, because if you're doing a drop-in workshop for actors, you can't send people off and learn lines for the following week because the class makeup changes. And within that, we set up an improv group. We started with doing a short form thing, and that just, for me, over time became, I want to get into this more and more. This is kind of what I want to do more of than the theater stuff. So from there, I eventually jumped ship and focused on improv completely by myself. This is a very long origin story, but
cool.
I had to spend a lot of time taking initiative and studying myself, because certainly there was very few options for learning improv in Dublin beyond what I had done. There was a lot of short form and that, but so I had to travel to learn. I watched so much content online, which is so funny now because we're being forced to have to watch and take part in content online, but I watched so much online content. I read everything I could. So I became this like sponge for sucking in, absorbing anything improv related. The Maydays were bringing over a lot of guest teachers and things like that. So I traveled and I did as much of that as I could and just exposed myself, just like, I want to learn. And I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable long term, but it ended up being a thing that I still do today. I still travel a lot, take a lot of workshops elsewhere. So yeah, that's been a very fulfilling experience. And I was very lucky that I was in a position because my day job allowed me to travel, so I could, I might be traveling for work and I can do a quick Google, who does improv in this town? And, and you can do things that way. So I was very fortunate because, as you know, in Europe, our relationship with theater and improv is a little different than, say, in the US. So because of that journey, I was exposed to different styles, different approaches, like many of us in Europe. And that kind of enabled me to get a broader suite of what I like in improv and what I don't like. And then you reach a point where you kind of like, I don't like this approach, or I prefer this approach, or this is my cup of tea. And, we start to align ourselves with that. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. So a very long, boring origin story, but that's my history. Thanks for asking. I'm glad somebody asked.
I wanted to ask because I can pull from people some interesting stories, and especially that I don't know most of it. So that's great. Tell me, which year was it? Like when you started, this old drop-ins and stuff. How long ago it was?
God, I'd have to work that out. The drop-ins would have been 2000. I'd have to look it up. It's somewhere in the noughties anyway, somewhere in the mid noughties thereabouts. I'd have to look it up though. I'm old now.
Just, around like if this is 10, 20 years ago, just...
It's less than 20 years ago, but it's more than 10 years ago for sure. So somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So coming back to that time, how was it at the beginning? Because you said like not many teachers, probably not many schools or not at all.
Hmm.
So who did you bring, and what was your like the biggest influences in that time? Where did you pick up the first interesting things?
Yeah, well, I mean, the road has been varied, but definitely the Maydays were a huge influence on me, not just from what they were teaching, but also their attitude. And obviously, they're lovely people. We all know that, but their attitude was just like something I guess we don't often see in the arts. And I say that, you know, kind of cautiously, but what I mean by that is the arts can be a very competitive playing field in any discipline. You know, um, stand-up comedians will do a gig, and not every stand-up comedian will watch other stand-up comedians do their thing. Or maybe I'm in a band and you're in a band, and I have a gig on Friday night and you have a gig on Friday night, and we see that as competition, and that's all nonsense. And what really impressed me with the Maydays was, you know, they helped Steve Rowe set up Hoopla, which to many would be viewed as competition to what they were doing. And that really highlights that, you know, improv is not a competitive thing. There's no competition in improv. What's good for one, what's good for you is good for me, because it helps grow that bubble of influence that improv, that any art form has. So they were, I just found them incredibly giving with their time. And obviously their teaching and their performance was just so inspiring. But that was something that I found very influential and very powerful. And it all ties back to this yes and thing. We yes and on stage, but do we yes and off stage? I mean, we should be yes anding and figuring it out afterwards. And I just felt that they embodied that in a very sincere and genuine way. They're very authentic. So that's the main. I think I do talk about them a lot. Another teacher that had a huge influence on me was the late Jason Chin. One thing, I think Jason kind of almost, he made me realize I had permission to just be myself, because he was a massive geek. And when I first started taking classes with him, he was making references to old movies that I liked. I was like, this is really cool. I can do this. I can like be like this. And that was hugely influential. And he was very patient with his teaching as well. So that was somebody that had a huge influence on me.
Did you
But
meet him through the Maydays? Because I know that they invited him over to come to England to teach, and then they
yeah,
were influenced by him.
yeah, it was all, yeah, they are, it's all their fault. It's all their fault. But I think it's fair to say, like with every improv teacher, there is something every improv teacher, no matter who they are, has to offer. Because once you find your thing in improv, once you find your voice and your personality in improv, you know, sharing that, everyone has something to offer, no matter who they are. I think that's something important for us all to recognize, because we do in improv get caught up in a culture of guru, which I'm not really a big fan of, because we put people on pedestals where, and that's fine, you know, because there are people that we all consider legends in improv. But what that actually does is that alienates people who are working their way up through that improv journey and that improv ladder, and it doesn't serve anyone. But I genuinely believe every improv teacher who has found their voice, every improviser has something to offer, something unique we can all take, because that's what learning improv is. That one thing I realized from us doing it in Europe is improv is we're like Batman. We have this utility belt, and you're in a scene and something's happening, and you go, oh, quickly, I'll take out my UCB fast-paced comedy tool, you know, or this is my slow-burning improv tool. You know, we have everything we learn, it just goes into the utility belt, and we're able to draw upon it. And just like Batman, we have some tools we prefer using more than others.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of my view.
Great. I didn't know that, and it's nice. I really like to dig this all subjects, and especially that I remember once talk, and I think it was talk also where you were involved, and that not so many teachers are um, known and recognizable. You know, like we know all these legends, but the people who are like sometimes hidden. Uh, Also, some people from Maydays, and you know, so there are some people, some treasures, which it's great to find and explore their teaching as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a teacher, it's a performer, Katie Nansen. I think she was with Baby Once Candy in the US at one point. And I took one workshop with Katie years ago, and I don't think she even knows this, but that partly, what she did partly contributed to the evolution of Neil Plus One, because she taught us a workshop on failing. Well, sorry, failure was a huge part of the workshop. and it was very profound. And you know, I don't know, I know very, very few Europeans, if any at all, that have, you know, that know Katie or have worked with her. So yeah, I mean, it just goes, now she could be a massive name locally, so I'm not trying to say that she's not or anything like that, but it just goes to show, you know, this happens all the time, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, what's your epiphanies from improv? Like, who gave you the note, or what was your experience which gave you like huge impact on your improv, or like made this flash, oh, this is what I want to do, or how it works, or how it helped me. So what would you say, what's your epiphany, improv epiphany?
So it's a loaded question, because I do have some issues with teaching, and just teaching in general as a practice, because being good at something doesn't make us a good teacher. So being able to teach is important. So one of the things that I've always struggled with as a human is being taught something and that's just the way it is. I'll give a quote. I remember a friend was telling me that they took an improv class, and one of the things the teacher said to them was, I'm going to teach you a lot of stuff in this class, but then you're going to just forget about it afterwards. And you know, I use that as an extreme example. And I said to this person, it's like, did you not anyone that kind of say, well, then why are we learning it if you're going to teach us something that we just have to unlearn? Because it's kind of silly. And I found there's a lot of that in improv. Like I struggled at first with things like make your scene partner look good. Or if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. Things like that I really struggled with, because like, I don't know if I understand that or if I appreciate that. So I kind of, I think, and I remember there was one teacher that was really good. I won't mention name because it's not a negative comment. And I took a class with him, and it was amazing, the class, but it so blew my mind because it was very heady. It was almost, I call it very like an improv class that was like a physics class. It was like, I was trying to wrap my head around it, but it was really great. And then I watched the teacher perform in a different show, and I was like, he's not doing anything that he does in the class. It's like, so why is that? And I had a conversation with friends, and like their response was, maybe he's just at a level in improv where he doesn't need it anymore. I was like, well, then I still don't understand that. So I struggled with things like that. So people though who helped me, again, John Kramer at the Maydays, and sorry, I don't mean to keep going on about the Maydays, but they were highly influential. John Kramer is an incredible teacher, and arguably one of the best teachers I've ever encountered in any discipline. And he was highly influential, highly empowering. I genuinely believe the guy is psychic. I remember one workshop, I had him over in Dublin teaching a workshop for a theatre group, and there was a participant, and we were actually, I think it was just a 3-line scene thing we were doing, and there was a participant, and John could tell what was going on in his mind, and he said to him, that thought about X that you have in your head, don't do it. And we were like, well, how did he know? Like John was super gifted like that. But so he just kind of empowered you as a person. You know, he took away all that shred of those voices in your head that tell you you're not good enough, cool enough, good looking enough. He stripped that all away and just allowed you to be you. So that was very profound. You couldn't make a mistake in his class. Who else? Gosh, there's so many. I don't want to sound like I'm name dropping either.
I will add at this point that if somebody is watching this, I did already an interview with John Kramer, which is also on the list of The Art of Yes. And he's talking about his teaching. And I agree with you that his classes are always full of fun and encouragement. And he as a teacher makes student look good.
Yeah.
It's also extraordinary thing, not always visible on the workshops, and everyone on the workshops I've been to were like, wow, that feels great. I feel like pushed and happy what we did together. So
yeah, and yeah, you're absolutely right. John is definitely the type of person that you walk out of that workshop pumped. It's just like you've come out of the gym and you're like, yeah, I've taken loads of speed. I'm really high. You know, you feel really pumped. So yeah, he's great like that. And another thing is the whole thing about the culture of mistakes. And you know, we were told, you know, there's no wrong way to do improv. Yeah, we're in a class learning what's right and wrong, and then if that was the case, a thing that I wondered, okay, so if there may be someone in your class that's the crazy person, person that's does unexpected things or isn't predictable. So let's say I'm that person, and the teacher asks for a volunteer, and I put up my hand, and then no one else volunteers. So if there's no wrong way to do it, then why are we not volunteering to be with, so once you learn, and there's a number of teachers who are very good at that. John obviously is one. But once, that was a very powerful thing to me when learning, being told it is one thing, but when you finally realize actually there is no wrong way to this, it genuinely doesn't matter. Because I believe there is no right and wrong in improv. What there are choices that we make that either make our life easier or make our life harder. And improv is an art form. Art is subjective. Not everything is going to be everyone's taste. You're going to have shows that are better than others. And once we accept that, it's totally fine. So understanding that you'll make a choice that will make your life easier, make your life harder, but no matter what you do, it won't be a mistake. To me, that's a very powerful thing. And that obviously leads into Neil Plus One, because I'm performing with somebody who's no training whatsoever. So they can't make a mistake. It's impossible for them to make a mistake because they don't know any better. So who's that on if it goes wrong? That's on me. So that's a very powerful insight for me. And it removes the fear of performing, which is a strange thing. It's a controversial thing. It's the only thing I sometimes have to lie about when it comes to talking improv, is the thing about nerves, but maybe we'll get to that. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a pretty powerful thing, and just accepting who you are in improv, accepting that there's things that in improv you're going to like and there's things that you won't like, and that's okay. I'm not a particularly big fan of fast-paced gag comedy, and it's great and it's fun to watch, but it's not something I want to do a lot of because it's not as fulfilling for me. I think often laughter is the least interesting part of improv, because you and I, Monica, we could go out and watch the funniest film in the world in the movies tonight. We can go see Spinal Tap, right? And afterwards we'll come out and we'll be all buzzed from how fun and funny it is. And then after about 20 minutes of it, we'll be like, okay, what are we going to do now? Let's go for a beer. And we'll talk about anything else except what we've just seen. But when you watch a piece of art that affects you emotionally beyond just comedy, that leaves a mark on us. That makes us think, it makes us feel. And we don't see enough of that in improv, yet that's another tool that we have access to. And if people are watching this beyond my mammy, if you think about improv shows you really enjoy, think about for a moment in improv shows that affected you emotionally and the effect or the impact that had on you beyond just the laughter. How did that make you feel? I think that's so satisfying in improv. It's so great to see those moments, but we do shy away. Improvisers will often shy away for that, or maybe it doesn't fit the script of we've got to get the gags in 10 a minute. So yeah, that's something as well.
I agree, because now this gave me to now the thing to recognize that as a performer sometimes we do this like gaggy, funny, quick thing, or just games or whatever. And then we sit at the festival, like coming back to Big If, and you sit and like, wow, this show, like this thing, these people, this, like you're in this art, in this piece for half an hour. I remember tears of us after your show, and with the Maydays when they were like, the standing ovation after their show. And then you think like, wow, to do this, like that's, everyone admires that, right? So it's this like double thing that we do this, but we want to get there as well, and to see the other different part, which is more emotional, more truthful in a way, so it's really
Now and it is the truthfulness of it. I mean, art is an escapism for us. We get to, if we watch reality TV, we're watching other people's miserable lives to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, and that's the bare minimum entry to feeling something from the arts. Did I just call reality TV the arts? I did, sorry. But narrative improv. There's a dramatic improv festival. There's great platforms for us to explore. Now, not everyone's going to be into that, of course, but isn't it great to come out of an improv show and say, God, Monica, when your character made this choice, I was really, isn't it great to have those discussions? And it allows us to explore, the fragility of life and our vulnerability as well. The human questions that we have. It allows us to explore that. which is great. And I know it sounds kind of like late night drinking whiskeys talking about this, but I think that's a lot more interesting to me. Um, as a discussion or as a thing, to be able to affect people beyond just laughter. Now, of course, I'm saying this, and the vast majority of my shows involve a lot of laughter if it all goes well. But it's nice that to see that happen and people to make those bold choices.
True. So is there like this epiphany which was like for you, like, think, wow, now my improv is different?
It's hard to say. Because I'm very hard on myself. I think a lot of us are, the imposter syndrome and all that. So it's just hard to say, because I kind of like, it's that thing of people say 9 nice things about you and what you do, and then one person will say something that's not so favorable, and then you just curl up into a ball and cry in the corner. And so I'm very hard on myself. So it took a long time for me to give myself permission to accept where I was going and where I was at. And I like that's not fully gone away to some degree, but it's kind of like I kind of care less now about it. So it's hard to it's a tough question, Monica, because there wasn't a eureka moment, because I've never allowed myself to recognize a eureka moment. But certainly, there's a chap, Matt Holmes, in Philadelphia, and he has a Matt Ann show, which was a big inspiration for me when I started wanting to do these solo shows. And I discovered Matt was the first person I discovered who did it. And when I started talking to him about what he did, he was very encouraging. And one of the things he said to me was, just do your first show, and that'll help you decide if this is something you really want to do. And I did, and it went well. And so that was an epiphany moment. Actually, I've just thought of another related show, but that was a very powerful one. First show I did when I was in Dublin, I think it was 2012, 2013. I think 2012 was the first show. And the show went really well. I was nervous as hell. The theater was full, and it went very, very well. And he was right. Do it and figure it out. But then I realized, okay, there's something here. There was a show I did in San Francisco, and the person I got out of the audience, he was a university professor. He was what you might consider a more challenging +1, because he was somewhat resistant to the process, asked a lot of questions. But during the show, I played a character. I played his father, and there was a subtle change about him as a person in the scenes with his father. And in the end, the very final scene, so his father and him had a falling out in the show, and then the final scene, they reconciled their differences. And he came over and hugged me. And that was the biggest move he made in the show. And then the lights went down, and yay. And after the show, then I always take the person aside and chat to him. He started to cry, and I was like, oh shit, what have I done? And he told me his dad had died the year previous, but that it was a very good thing, because the show allowed him to emotionally connect to his father passing. And it was the first time that had happened since the funeral. And I was like, wow. And, that stuck with me. I got this lovely message the next day about it. And that was his first time to experience an improv show. And he was like, I'm looking forward to the next show. I was like, oh God. But that had an impact on me, because then I realized, that was that big realization of there's more to improv than just what we're doing on stage. We have an ability to affect people positively. We can touch people's lives through the stories we tell. Not all the time, but that's something. And that's certainly been a very profound moment. There has been, a couple of shows that I've done where people have had, similar experiences where they've, as a +1, or they've walked away with some greater learning for them. And that's really nice. That's really lovely. But that teaches you as an improviser, you have to respect the characters that you play. Mm-hmm. You have to respect the characters that people play, and obviously the respect we have for each other. And I think that comes back to something TJ or Dave said, TJ Jagodowski or Dave Pisquesi, one of them said about, playing characters, but really respecting the characters that we play, no matter who they are, plays a part in that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they were very profound moments along the improv journey.
So as we touched Neil +1, you started to say before, you mentioned that you had the influence to start it. So tell me why you started a show which is explaining, for our audience, you play the show, so you take one person from audience and you try to take someone who is the first time on the improv show ever. So it's their first improv show they probably see. And then you take them on the stage and you play like a 20-30 minute set, which is a show called Neil +1. So how did you come out to this idea? And yeah, what was in the influence and how did you start it?
Sure. So there's two things behind the show. One was at the time I was performing with a troupe, and it was very hard to get the troupe to travel for work reasons and financial reasons. So anytime I was traveling, I was going on my own. So I wanted to develop a solo type of show, and I pondered the idea of using the audience member, and how would that work? Because immersive or interactive theater, I certainly hadn't come across that in my improv journey up to that point. But I'd come across interactive theater. We experience that all the time. We see that all around us. So that was one thing. But the second thing was, again, it came to this thing of there's no wrong way to improvise. So if that's the case, it doesn't matter if I'm performing with Susan Messing or Joe Smith, who owns the hardware shop down the road. It shouldn't really matter. Because my job is just to make the other person look good. So like I said, Matt, then I found Matt through the internet, and again, embracing that spirit of yes and. He was very encouraging. He wasn't going, hey, get off my turf. He was very encouraging. He's doing it longer than me, but I found my voice with my show, and my show is quite different than what Matt does, but again, he was a huge influence. I watched every single show he had online. It was very
He's also playing with a member of the audience.
He plays a member of the audience, yeah. So my show developed into this narrative thing, and I kind of call it an alternate view of the life of the person I get in the audience. So the first 5-10 minutes of the show is an interview with them, which serves two things. One is it makes them relax, because I look for someone who's never seen improv before, never taken an acting workshop. So it makes them realize, actually, this isn't stand-up comedy. I'm not being picked on here. But second, I get all my offers. I learn about them as well, because there's a possibility they'll give me very few offers during the show. And then we perform in a narrative, and they essentially are themselves. So if it's Monica, then you're still Monica in the show. So we'll make it as easy as possible to relax into that character. And we just go from there. And it's a hell of a lot of fun. And there's a variety of challenges and experiences that come out of that. And it's great because I travel and do it on my own. I don't have to worry about other people booking flights or things like that. So it's very easy. It's easy to travel with.
Yeah. So tell me, what was the most you said about this meeting with the guy who you played father of, but so what was the most, I don't know, touchy, memorable, unforgettable moment of these shows, or which are the moments, because I guess there's pretty few of them.
Yeah, but that certainly was the most profound. But I mean, there has been quite a few. The shows in Barcelona actually were a lot of fun. That show with Thomas was the guy's name. The second time I did a show in Barcelona, and he'd gone through a breakup in real life, and we played it on stage. I found that so sad. The ending of that show was so sad, and I think the final scene, the video is up there. I don't think I speak in the final scene because I was so sad. And I remember, I think Katie was in the audience. She was crying during the show. And he loved the experience. He wasn't going through what we went through because he'd gone through it all before. He'd gone through a breakup before, whereas we were all living this breakup on stage. And that was so nice. To share that. That was lovely. There was a show I did in Brussels some years ago, and the lady I got out of the audience, I think she worked for the EU Parliament. I'm assuming she did because everyone in Brussels does. And she was from Honduras. I can't think of her name right now. And I asked her at the start of the show, you've never done anything like this before, and she said no. And during the show, she was amazing. She played high status when it was called upon. She was super confident on the stage. And I thought she played a trick on me. And after the show, I said to her, did you lie about your performing experience? And she said, no, I'm in Brussels in a boring job all the time. And you told me I could say and do what I wanted. So it's great. And that was so great because, you could see she clearly had the freedom to just to be silly, to play on stage. Mm-hmm. That was nice. That was really good. But there's been, there have been people who messaged me after shows that said, wow, it really such a good time, and it was such a great experience, and things like that are really nice. But yeah, there's been a few.
Great. I remember also from the other season in Barcelona, there was a guy who you play with, and he was like, we were like super surprised how he was agreeing to everything you have said. Like, every time you said something, it was like, yes, yes, I did that, and like.
Yeah. So
Uh,
this is interesting because with every single Neil Plus One show, there's always a point in the show where the person from the audience realizes that by to yes and without being told, they realize that the path of least resistance, the easier choice, is to just agree with everything.
mhm.
And it doesn't matter who the person is, what the show is. There's always that point in the show. In fact, I had one show where there was the guy I had, and he just denied. He kept actually saying, "No, you're still Neil. No, we're still in the theater." He kept saying things like that during the show, and he was super resistant. And actually, the last line of the show was when he finally yes-anded, and it got a huge roar from the audience. Um, so that happens, and some people do realize it sooner rather than later. Like that lady in Brussels, for example, she just from immediately whatever the setup was, she ran with it, because people, we realize without being told that actually if I go with it, it's easier. If I don't resist what's happening on stage and just let go, it becomes easier. And that tells us as improvisers, we've been studying this stuff and doing workshops, that tells us something, that if somebody who hasn't been told realizes that, just go with it, let go, let your inhibitions go, then that informs us who are training at this, that there's something in that. So that's been an interesting realization from the show.
Yeah. So what was the most challenging thing then? Because it not always goes like easy going, It's
Hmm.
sometimes that there is a struggle. So what's kind of struggles you have, and what was the most difficult thing you did with this show?
It's interesting because it's not that there's anyone that's particularly challenging. I mean, I had one person one time, and they would go through periods of accepting and go through periods of denying at various points. So they would deny the reality, and but that's fine. We can deal with that. But definitely the most challenging show I had was it was for an event. A kind of a word, there was a medical condition that I have, so I did an improv show to mark this World Tinnitus Day, and we were in this lovely venue in Dublin, and the girl I got out of the audience during the interview, I kind of started to realize, hang on a second, I don't think this person is over the age of 18. I think she was 16, because she mentioned something about school, and I was like, oh crap. And the interview had started, and I realized, okay, this changes the dynamic of the show completely. And that was the most challenging show I ever did, because that obviously limited what I could do on stage, because I was now a male adult on stage with a female minor. And she was a teenager, and she was a very extroverted teenager. So I'm grappling the dynamic, but I'm also grappling the fact that she was fearless on stage. So that was the equivalent of being beaten up in an improv scene, because she worked me very, very hard, but it all worked out fine. But that was definitely the most challenging, because that was consciously on my mind throughout it. This person is under the age of 18. So that immediately eliminated a variety of characters and narratives that could emerge as a result of that. So that was interesting. And definitely the most challenging.
So I will still stay with this show because I really love it. And I know few people, and probably not too many, but I know few people who can make a person on the stage which is looking good. And you are one of these people. You really
Thank you.
can make your partner looking good. Like, that's my ideal word of this description. Your show is really showing that. So what's your trick? What's your technique? What's your how you do that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm kind of a giver in life anyway, to some degree. But I don't know. I'm always asking myself, subconsciously, what do I need to do here? What does this person need? What does this person need? Give, give, give. And it's like you're chopping bits of your flesh off to give them, give them what they need. And it's always that, no matter what I feel on stage, no, Neil, it's not about you, it's about this person.
Mhm.
And you have no choice with Neil Plus One, because you're dealing with an audience member who has never taken a class. So you have no choice. So any feeling that I get the show isn't working out, that's on me. That's not on that person. So that naturally pushes you into that zone of, if this isn't working out, it's on you. So deal with it. Um, so it is just give, give, give. So I guess, because Neil Plus One, if I have that feeling something doesn't feel right here, then it means that there's something I'm not doing to enable that. So I think that's really what it is. Take that spotlight away from yourself. And It does. It's funny. I think the first time I did the show in Barcelona, I was talking to, I think it was Ella, I was talking to before the show. God, the first time I did Barcelona was such, in many ways, an intimidating experience because, it's one of the best improv festivals. Like, it's massive. Like, there's like the whole planet is there. And the theater is huge. That first year I was there, the theater was massive. But the green room area was like a shopping mall. There was the green rooms, and the procedure was before your show you were in the green room, and then at a certain point you would be called up to get ready to go onto stage because they had the thing moving like a machine. And I was like, I don't really need a green room because I'm just on my own. I'm getting ready and all the rest. So I'm hanging in this empty green rooms. I was going, what the hell am I doing here? And so I was getting in the zone for the show, and I think it was Ella came down and she was getting me ready. And at one point she turns, I'm not really sure, but she asked me about the show. She goes, I don't really follow what's going to happen. And I was a little bit dismissive of her questions because I was getting in the zone. And I think I just said to her something like, oh, look, my job is just to make sure. Oh, yeah, I think she asked, are you going to really use a non-improviser? And I think I just said, because I was getting in the show zone, oh, look, my job is just to make that person look like a rock star. And it's funny because I think it was Noah said to me when they did the festival review and they're reviewing the shows that somebody on the festival team said, oh, Neil got very lucky. That guy from the audience was great. And then Ella said, well, Neil told me before the show his job was to make the person look like a rock star, and it sounds like he did. So, that if I do my job right, all the credit goes to the audience plus one member, and rightly so. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction. I can, like, when the audience are cheering, I can disappear into the background and let that person, bask in their glory. So it is really just be as selfless as I can and constantly be asking myself, what do I need to do? What do I need to give? And reminding yourself that no matter what the other person does, even if it feels like a stupid move or a wrong move, they've done the right thing. They have done the best thing they could ever do for you. Just treat everything they do as gold. It's easier said than done, obviously, but the more you are consciously aware of that going into a scene, the easier it is to make that thought become behavior.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do usually when people deny the reality of the scene and denying all the time?
But it's still, it's just basic supporting their choice, yes-anding it. A trick you learn in narrative improv is, it's how to turn, the crazy relative into that's the way they've always been. It's that line of, that person's always been like that. You just normalize that behavior. You've normalized that denying. Sure, we have that in life the whole time. We have it at the moment. There's people denying that wearing face masks has any effect on coronavirus, silly things like that. So we do that in real life anyway. People will deny a truth or reality, but it doesn't negate them being human and having an experience. And it's the same thing on stage. Just yes and support the choice that they make.
Yeah, in reality, we say like, just, okay, I don't have to talk to you, right? But
exactly.
When you are with the partner, you need to be with them and to deal with that. And it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've depth as humans, we're in movies and in shows, the more interesting work is when there's depth of character. People aren't just inherently evil. You don't have a character that's evil. They wear a leather jacket and they don't shave their face, and they just don't go around having evil thoughts. They've probably sent a birthday card to their parents, to their mother at some point. They probably helped give money to charity at some point. So good people do bad things, bad people do good things. There's depth to it. And just like humans, why can't it be the same with the characters we play on stage? That makes it more interesting. So that allows us to have, denying something can be a character's point of view. It can be an emotional point of view.
Yeah, and sometimes even pretty easy because they keep this denying, so they keep the point of view, and then it's easier to play with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you play, because you said you treat this show as a narrative thing, do you think about not really maybe story, but you have the line where you feel it goes, so you push this, or it's I would say sometimes we feel that somebody is following us, so it's agreeing, so we can go some kind of direction, and sometimes we just have to adjust quickly to that. So do you think about narration in the show, or you just follow the moment and just being there?
Yeah, just follow the moment. I mean, there might be something that comes out in the interview, like for example, that show with the breakup. It definitely felt like that the character who broke up with him should make an appearance in the show, and it ended up following that. So sometimes that might happen, but it's not pre-planned. It just feels from the interview this could be something interesting. But it's not playback theater. We're not recreating somebody's life experience or story on the stage. In fact, a lot of the time they might make a reference. I've had a show where somebody referenced they were in a band. And then the show ended up being, well, what if their musical choices became a success? What would their life look like? So that could be a thing. But it maybe something happens in the first scene and it takes us off on a path or a journey. There's it's like anything in improv. You can't take a plan or a script to the stage. It's not going to work. So.
Yeah, so I'm just always thinking about the process, because sometimes we see where it goes, so we can push that direction. And did you ever play like solo show, like full stuff alone? Or
no, I haven't, and I have seen it done, and I have great admiration for people that do that. But no, I haven't done that. Haven't done that yet.
But would you like to try that? Like, do you think of that?
I haven't really given it a lot of thought, to be fair. I mean, I do enjoy, one of the things I like about improv is performing with other people, that shared experience. Doing it solo, I don't know. I mean, I've friends in that who have solo shows. I've done well, actually, I'll tell a lie. I did a cheeky thing once. There was you could call it the equivalent of a variety night, a theater variety night. And one of the rules they had was that you had to do a scripted work. So I submitted my show, but it wasn't scripted, it was improvised. So I did technically do a 5-10 minute set of solo improv. It wasn't comedy, it was dramatic in nature. But I wanted to see if I could make it work. Could I convince an audience that without them knowing that a piece of improvised work was actually scripted? And it worked. So other than that, though, I've not gone down that path.
So how was that experience? Because I guess it must have been a bit stressful, or I don't know, like, because it was new and you did it just once.
So yeah, so basically I had to submit the show, what the show was. I didn't have to submit a script, so that's why I could get away with it. So the show was about an alcoholic. So I did have the character in my head and the location. That was what I had in my head. And it was inspired from something in real life, because I lost an uncle to alcohol. So it was inspired by something in real life, but I didn't bring a plot or a script to the stage, but I had the character and the location, but everything that happened on stage was improvised. But I mean, I was more nervous about getting found out. If somebody asked me, who wrote that? I'd have to say, oh, I wrote that. Yes, I wrote that. That I was nervous about it. There was no financial gain or anything like that, so I didn't cheat or anything. There was no awards or anything, but it was just I wanted to see if I could pull it off. But yeah, again, nerves is an interesting thing with improv, and I sometimes find myself lying with this. I don't get nervous before a show, not in the way that I scientifically. When we experience nerves physically, it's the same feeling we get when we're excited, but it's how our brain interprets those signals. Now, when I get on an airplane, I get nervous. Even though I fly a lot, I get nervous. And I know it's the safest thing in the world. It's so irrational because, I'm not going to die on that plane, but my brain doesn't care about that. So that I get nervous then. But walking on a stage, I don't get nervous. And I feel guilty about that because we hear like things like, oh, a little bit of nerves is good. I mean, there's probably a little bit of nerves there, but I'm just so used to it that I don't think about it like that. So sometimes I have to lie and say, yeah, I'm getting a little bit nervous just so that other people feel I'm normal.
So how many characters did you play in this one man show?
Oh, there was just one character. There's one character throughout it, yeah.
So it was but it wasn't like a monologue. It was playing just one.
So the way I played it, like he did a lot of talking to the audience, and there was interaction with another character, but you never hear that other character speak, or you never see that other character. So it was just the one character.
Okay, so there was no switch between characters.
No. Okay. I do that Neil Plus One day. We'll switch characters. I had one Neil Plus One show where the person I got out of the audience, he started switching characters. It's the only time it ever happened, but he switched characters during it. And it was great. And we ended up having this carousel of us switching characters, which was a lot of fun. But I do that character swap in the Plus One, all right. But I didn't do that solo show.
Great. So I was thinking of something else connected to that. So do you have like you said you don't have a fear now, or like you treat this as a just a feeling we have like excitement, but did you have a fear, and how did you, if you had it, how did you work with this? How did you get over that?
And just keep doing it. You know, we don't conquer fear by running away from the fear. So it just really is a case of keep on doing it. And your brain, you just get used to it. It's the muscle memory. And it's okay to be nervous. I'm not saying having nervous something wrong with being nervous. You have to be nervous before you can get over that. But being aware that that's a normal part of the process is the first thing. But the more we do it, it's like in workshops. You know, in workshops when people are hesitant to volunteer for something, why are we doing that? We're doing that because of the fear. There's nothing that's going to happen in that space when you don't volunteer that's going to make you feel better about volunteering. So you're better off just getting up, follow the fear, as they say. Just get up, do it, and then you can do the analyzing afterwards. But analyze it with somebody who has a more constructive eye and ear than your own. But yeah, that really is, there's no sorcery to it. It's just get up and do it and do it and do it.
Hmm. So do you have like anything in what you can do on the stage, which is still after, I don't know, 15 or 20 years doing it, like challenging? Or is something which brings you like, oh wow, I never did this, or I'm like, maybe not fear, but like, ugh.
Oh, yes, definitely. I enjoy musical improv, and anytime because I don't get to do a lot of it, but when I do musical improv, I do get nervous with musical improv because I can't sing for shit. Uh, and so that's actually, I did a show. I guested in a show Will Luera, in Florida, in his Florida Studio Theater, and it was the preview night of this musical that he was doing, When X Meets Y, and I got to perform in the preview, and oh my god, I was nervous as hell because we had to wear shirts and tie on stage. Florida's hot. Wear a shirt and tie. The audience members were so well dressed. They were having their dinner during the show and all this, and I was like, and then there was Ali Reid was one of, and she's like a musical theater singer, professional singer, and there was another chap in the show. He's a professional singer, and I was like, oh god, don't mess this up, Neil. So I was nervous with that. But yeah, if there's anything though in improv that still terrifies me, it's improvised hip hop and rap. I have so much admiration for the likes of North Coast, the Band O' Man, Will Nyam, and I've never done it in a show, and I don't think I ever will. I took a workshop with Trent
Yeah.
Transy, and oh my god, it was tough going. So I think that's my limits. That's my
That's your limit.
kryptonite. Yeah.
Cool. And this is, by the way, this workshop with Trent is really great. So if
Mm.
anybody wants to have a great workshop, I also would advise to take workshop with Trent. Trent Pensy from States, but he lives in Finland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so going forward, you have a festival in Dublin, right?
Hmm.
Who who started it?
So Improv Fest Ireland. So it was 2013, I think, was the first year. So yeah, I set up the festival. First of all, we didn't have one in Ireland, and a chap called Kurt Mabry, who I think lives in Thailand now, but at the time was living in Shanghai in China. It's kind of his fault that the festival was set up, because I was visiting Shanghai and we were doing a show or workshop together, and he was getting ready to go to the Manila Improv Festival, and he was like, "Are you going, Neil?" And I was like, "Where the hell's Manila?" I was in the Philippines. I was like, "They have an improv festival in Manila. If they have an improv festival in Manila, surely we can have one in Ireland." And so that was that was a big inspiration. But also, improv festivals are such an important part of the improv community because, you know, I'll argue this point till my last breath. Improv is a community-based art form. There, our audience members all come, for the vast majority of theaters and cities, our audiences are comprised of community or community-related people. There's no getting away from that. If you can't create a healthy community on your improv scene, you don't have an improv scene. And I'll strongly fight anyone politely on that point. So I recognize the importance of community in improv, and the role that a festival has to play. But plus, a festival does a couple of things. It kind of puts your city on the map in a way, your country on the map in the improv world, but it allows your local improv scene to experience the richness of what other improv troops in other countries and cities have to offer as well. So it's great for that. That's why when any city or country that has an improv festival, if you're an improviser in that location, get behind your improv festival, support the incoming improv troops, go see the shows. It blows my mind when I hear of places where improv festivals and you go visit and you ask them, where's the local scene, and they'll say, oh, not everyone comes. And it blows my mind when you hear that, because they're such an important part of improv and our development. I mean, how many times have you or I gone to an improv festival, seen a show, or met somebody who's been hugely inspiring, and we all go, I want to do that. It's so important. So yeah, it started in 2013. And at the time, I don't know how we did it, but Brian Quinn, I think you know Brian, we were literally, we were taking tickets at the door, showing people to their seats. Brian was jumping on the light desk. It was literally chaos in that first year. And then I brought in Orla McGovern, who'd been kind of helping out in the first year. And then Orla got involved as well. So, and the festival grew and expanded. And we don't have we were due to have a festival this year, but obviously the world has changed. So hopefully we'll be back soon.
No online festival this year.
No, I think there has been an online festival already, and people do have a funny relationship with improv online. Some people are completely adverse to it. I think there is, I don't have an issue with online improv. I've kind of view improvising online a bit like sport. Kind of the analogy I give to people: if you or I, let's say, are let me think of an international sport. Let's say we're soccer players and we're the best soccer players in the world, and suddenly the government decides, hey, soccer is now illegal, but you can get into rugby. So tomorrow we pick up a rugby ball. We're not going to be the best rugby players in the world, and we shouldn't expect to do so. And yes, there's similarities. It's in a field. There's goals. There's a ball, and we wear shorts. But there's so many different skills, and there's different rules. There's different, fans. So improv online is not the same as improv on stage. And I think an important part for improvisers to recognize is the fact that you can't recreate the stage on the screen. But I've seen great admiration for the people who are just killing it. Jay Suko, how many shows has that guy done? Take a holiday, Jay. Take a vacation. You've done so much.
But he's done minutes a day.
10, but he's done a few of them in some days. But he's been doing shows. Parallel Phonogramograph, PGraph have been doing shows. The main age of shows. Hoopla have been doing shows. So many people are doing shows, and I'll tell you who's killing it is the comedy sports guys. Comedy Sports San Jose, the short form really lends itself to improvising online. And the comedy sports people, particularly the San Jose group, their shows are insanely good. It's really, really good. So some people have figured out and worked it out, but other people just aren't interested. And that's fine. That's fine. Absolutely. But what is interesting about it all is it's been a real test of community. Mm-hmm. Because we've seen some people engage with it, some people disengage, and then there's some people in the middle, and that's been a little disappointing. I found that we haven't all rallied around and supported each other more, and hopefully there's a learning for us in that. It has been important to, we're still there. We have to figure this out. COVID isn't going away anytime soon. It's going to be part of our lives when theaters do reopen. So yeah, it's just recognizing that. But yeah, I do feel it's been a real test of community.
Mm-hmm. So what's the most what's the most challenging in doing festival? Because it's usually a lot of work, not so much money, nice community, that's true. So what's challenging, especially for you, because you run it, so you are totally attached to that?
Yeah, money is the obvious thing, firstly, because you'll never have enough money. No matter how much money you have, it'll never be enough. So to do all the things you want. But really, the ultimate challenge is time. Time is the commodity. You can somehow get more money, but you'll never get more time. Mm-hmm. So time is always working against you. And for the vast majority of people, you're doing it on a voluntary basis. You have real life stuff you have to deal with. You have the jobs that do pay you. So there are things you have to balance. So running festival is very much a giving experience. You have to give a lot of yourself to that. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's not going to work. But also having a strong people beside you to work with you. I kind of do believe that to a certain degree you have to run a festival as a dictator because you're operating in a voluntary capacity. I've tried other aspects in different creative fields, and I don't necessarily feel if you're not paying people, you kind of have to run it somewhat as a dictatorship, to get it to work. And there's different. Now, when I say dictatorship, I don't mean. I mean there's you have to have a structure behind decision making, in order to make that work, and that can be a hard thing to do, but ultimately time. Money, the money challenge is the money challenge, but you can make it work, anything work within your budget. There's mechanisms available to you to fundraise. Some people are lucky they can apply for grants and funding, but it's time. You can never get more time.
Mm-hmm. So how many people is like because like Barcelona we've talked about is like huge and one of the biggest festivals, if not.
Yeah, I think Noah kidnaps people and tells them you've got to work this
Yeah.
out, because they've got people. They nearly have people in the airport working for the festival.
But how big is Irish Festival? Because I have never been there. I promise I will one day. But how big? How many people? How many teachers? How many seats you have when you perform?
It changes, and it has changed every year. Now we use the same venue, but within the venue there's different spaces, and the theater space, their traditional theater space has 70 seats. And maybe you can put a few extra chairs, but we kind of outgrew that. There was one year we actually had, and then they have this large hall which they've converted into a theater space, and you can pull it. I think you have 200 chairs in it. One year we actually used both spaces, but I kind of felt it wasn't necessary. It kind of you had different options for shows, and I didn't feel like that was as what's the word? It didn't feel as great as just having the one venue. And then the last one we just purely used that large space. We had the budget and that to do that, and that definitely felt more worthwhile. But the team changes every year. Like I say, there's a lot of work involved in it. You don't want people to burn out. So the team does change every year, and you just have to be disciplined and recognizing you're never going to have enough people, and that's fine. But if myself and Brian could make that work in the first year, check tickets, showing you to your seat, jumping up in the light box, jumping up on the stage to introduce acts, checking on the acts in the green room, we made it work.
So is the festival growing, like, getting more people each year?
Yeah, I mean, well, creatively it's changed every year. The number of teachers, but diversity as part of that is important. Giving a variety of different teachers a voice, and getting a nice balance between the experienced acts and new acts and local acts. That actually is a huge challenge, because most communities have a lot of local acts, and you can never program everyone, and that can be a huge challenge as well. But there's no model yet that I've landed on that I've kind of said this is it. But certainly every year has been exciting with what we've done, so that's cool.
Yeah, and I think that it makes more difficult because you are an English-speaking country, so like everyone who comes speaks English, and opposite to Barcelona, whereas a Spanish-speaking country, but festival is English-speaking, so they have like they can narrow it to the English experience.
I mean, that's what blew my mind about Poland. When Alan invited me over to the festival, and I was sitting on the plane going over, and I genuinely did not know what to expect from the Polish festival. And then I walk into this place, and it was like Disneyland. There was like, I think that was the largest audience I've ever had for a show. There was like 500-600 people in that space that we had. There was like cameras. There was like people from the radio. There was cupcakes in the green room. Take note, festivals. There was cupcakes at the Krakow festival. That blew my mind. And of course, it just said to me, "Oh, not everyone speaks English, and not everyone has to speak English, Neil. There are improvisers who speak different languages." Well, that was incredible. That festival was incredible.
That's true. It makes it's impressive.
I remember my first night at the festival on the Friday night. I sat through a couple of acts. Now, it was all in Polish. I had a headache at the end of it because my brain was clearly trying to work out what people were saying. But it was interesting. It was interesting to do that because I was trying to, how much of this will I understand purely based on the physical behaviors of the cast members? And some of it did. There was one act. I can't remember what the act name was. There was two girls and a guy in the group. I think the two girls perform a duo together. And that was a great show for someone who couldn't understand language. To me, that was a great show because they were so physical. There was a lot of emotion on stage. I really enjoyed that. But it's hard watching improv when you don't understand the language.
Yeah, I remember also some of the teachers from like 2 or 3 years ago who were really watching all the Polish shows just to
Mm,
see the different scene, but also how much they can understand, or how is it
yeah,
to be in the Polish on the Polish show.
yeah.
um, Neil, what's a tightrope theater, or is this the space
Tightrope.
where you perform?
Yeah, so Tightrope is probably the community. It's an improv thing we have here in Dublin, and it's very much community based improv initiative. So it's a well, in normal times it's a twice weekly night, and each night we program different acts each night. It was set up a number of years ago by some friends. And when they approached me about it, I said, I don't want to be, I don't want to be part of the organizers because I do so much and I don't want to be the constant face of improv in Dublin. And so I was like, you set this up and let me linger in the background. And they did a really good job because they kind of had seen what I was doing community based, and they wanted to make Tightrope community based. So, and that has changed over the years. It went from having a team of people to kind of now having stakeholders, and we have an artistic director that rotates. So yeah, the beautiful thing about it is in normal times, of course, every 2 months, the artistic director will ask people to submit their shows and availability, and anyone can apply for a show. And then what the artistic director does is programs the night to make sure there's balance between maybe up and coming acts and the more experienced acts. So it's very much open to everyone, and it's really great because you get to hang out and meet other improvisers, and if there's something international going on, that's a lot of fun as well. And during pandemic and lockdown, we've been doing, myself and Dan, the artistic director, we've been doing a weekly Tightrope TV, we call it. So we interview someone from the improv world, we interview someone in the international world. That's great, and then we do a jam afterwards, and we do that every Friday. So that's been fun. Um, it's been interesting talking to people internationally about their whole improv experience like this and
Yeah.
their whole lockdown experience.
Yeah, lockdown gave me this experience as well, and I'm
Mm,
really enjoying
yeah,
it.
yeah, definitely a positive.
Yeah, and also a part of like just doing a project, which is for me like educational and great, like meeting you and having this time now with you,
Mm,
like eyes to eyes, and having this time. It's really great because first of all, we never have time on the festivals to talk
yeah,
that
exactly.
long and that peacefully. And the other thing is I can get to know a lot of things and also
Mm,
spread it to others that they can get to know you and other interviewees. So I love that.
yeah, no, it's absolutely right about festival. Particularly if you're running a festival, you don't get to kind of connect with everyone, and that's hard. But when you're attending a festival, there's just so much happening. I mean, some festivals are really good at doing social events, um, which is great. But yeah, you're just so busy that you can't get, and particularly Barcelona when like there's a billion people at it,
Yeah.
and you meet so many people. It's like you need to almost have your diary out and say, okay, I can give you 10 minutes at 11 o'clock on Thursday. But festivals are just such a great experience. You meet such great people, you get to see so many great acts, and you get to do workshops. And often, a lot of festivals, the workshops are quite not cost effective. They're quite priced. They're not as pricey as
Mhm.
some festivals are really good at keeping the price down of workshops, which is really great. And that's something that we do at Improv Fest Ireland, is try to keep the cost down for workshops. So yeah, I mean, they're just, I really miss improv festivals. Really miss improv festivals.
Yeah. So tell me about the community, because I guess it grew since you have started it, and it's like yeah, growing. So in Dublin specifically, is there like many places, many theaters, or it's like you rent them, or you just cooperate with some pubs? How does that thing work?
Yeah, there's no dedicated improv theater as such. But yeah, so we rent theaters and spaces. So there's a number of different improv initiatives. There's Tightrope, obviously. There's Mob Theater. There's Grand Stretch, and there's Stoke Improv, and that's a mix of teachers, performances. Now there's other things as well, but it is people in bars, people renting theaters. There's no purpose-built theater where there's classes and shows in the same venue in the traditional sense.
So community is growing since that.
Your community is definitely growing. I mean, I remember the first time I set up a community jam years ago, and there was like 10 people at it or something like that. And now, there's half the people in the improv community I don't recognize their faces. So that's great. We're definitely growing. And it's always nice when you meet somebody, and you end up talking about improv and they say, oh, I took a class with Monica. And it's like, oh, great. So we're, improv is getting out there, it's a thing. So that's really nice. It is growing. There's some challenges in Ireland in terms of trying to get your hands on a proper space, a dedicated space where you can hang the improv name above the door. There are some challenges with that. Ireland's a funny place when it comes to property and business, but we will get there. That's one of Tightrope's long-term goals. Is we have a fund for our own space. So that's one of the goals anyway.
Cool.
So the clubhouse for improv.
Do you know, like you set the date, like you want to do it like in 1 or 5 years or whatever? Is it
as soon as it's financially possible, really is the thing. Of course, the pandemic changes everything immediately, but we have some challenges with property. You always see rents going up and leases going up and price never coming down, and the pandemic hasn't seemed to change that, which is crazy. We've seen some theaters and venues close already because rents were unsustainable and the landlords closed them down rather than reducing rents. So that just blows my mind. But yeah, as soon as it's financially an option, we'll do it. We'll click the button.
And I was just thinking, if there's like a part of Dublin, is there another places with improv? Like, is Dublin the hub, the main hub, and then there are small places, or how?
Yeah, there's improv in Galway, in Belfast. Belfast have a theatre they use. They're great up there. There's Galway, Orla McGovern, she's based out in Galway, and Jessamine Fairfield actually is based out in Galway as well. There's improv in Cork, Limerick. I think there's improv in Wexford, I think, as well. But certainly the largest is in Dublin. It obviously makes sense from a population perspective, but there are other places where you can, on certain nights, you can catch some improv.
Cool. That's on my list.
There's a road trip. There's a vacation road trip that when all this is over, people can do. You can go to all the different cities in Dublin or in Ireland and catch some improv.
I almost been there this year, but Corona. So tell me, we almost wrapping up, but tell me about, because you do now improv completely for a living, like you don't do anything else, right? So you do applied improv as well?
Yeah. So yeah, improv is my life. And yeah, so my background, I worked in business for a long time. I was senior management in a multinational company, and people development is a huge passion of mine. I'm also a qualified coach, and my master's is in training and education, and my master's thesis is in improv. And I also am certified in emotional intelligence. So I have emotions now. I have proof I have emotions. So yeah, I do a lot of corporate work, corporate training, and that some of it is directly improv related, that someone will say they want improv training, and others is definitely being pulled from improv. So I use improv in all offerings. Sometimes I don't explicitly state it, but ultimately something in there is improv related. And the interesting thing with corporates is, what you realize very quickly is credibility is a huge challenge with applied improv. And what I mean by that is that there is no formal qualification in it. A lot of businesses don't really understand it anyway. And, it is seen as just a comedy thing. The most popular thing I get asked for is team building. And it's usually somebody has a little bit of budget to spend. And when somebody asks me, when a business asks me, we want to learn improv, I say, why do you want to learn improv? What do you want to achieve? Because improv is not the goal. Improv in business is the tool. It's the journey. The end goal is we need more trust. We need to develop trust as a team. We need to have stronger communication skills. We need to be more understanding of cultural differences in our organization. That's really what companies want to achieve. And improv is a tool we can use for that. And then there's obviously the basic things like communication skills, authentic presenting, stuff like that are always in demand. So yeah, I've been very lucky that it took some time to get there, and I had to get the masters and all the rest before certainly some of the academic institutes would listen to me. But yeah, I'm very fortunate that I can do that. The pandemic has presented its challenges to all of us in, in the training world and doing that. But it's great. What's sometimes the most fun is when, a company has no interest in improv, they think, and they want you to teach something and you're really teaching them improv skills, but you're not allowed to mention it because that'll scare them away. And then at the end you say, oh, by the way, this is all improv tools that we used in this workshop. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, it's really such a rewarding thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's achievable if you work hard at it.
Mm-hmm. So how do you sell your abilities?
Oh God, I hate selling. So there's a lot I do. I write on LinkedIn, networking conferences. There's a number of professional bodies and executive educational institutes that I'm associate with, which is great. Because there's a training company, an executive education company in Ireland, and I'm now their improv guy, which is so great to be able to say that you're one of the most respected in Europe, and they have an improv guy. How great is that? But yeah, you have to put yourself out there. You have to do a lot of conferences and talks and webinars and stuff like that. And in a lot of the time, you've only got one shot to make a name for yourself, to prove yourself at these things. But you have to be able to translate the world of improv into business. If you can't do that, nobody cares, because there's so many wonderful trainers in the business world out there. There's so many different things other than improv that have a positive effect. So you have to be able to translate improv into the business speak. And an example I give to people who are considering it is something like this. And this is a real life client I had. They came to me and they said, we want you to work with our team because we need to learn to say no to people. And what I say to people, who want to get into applied improv is ask yourself, how do you teach a company yes and that wants to learn how to say no? Because that's the kind of thing, that's meaningful for companies. That's, you have to deal with. And there's a huge level of resistance to improv training in the business world. If you advertise a class that you're running, at least you know that people might turn up nervous, but they're there of their own free will. But if a company hires you, I've had cases where companies don't inform their team because, they're somewhat apprehensive about the process. So they want to tell their team and scare them away. And you have people who sit here like this and all the rest. So you do experience that. So facilitating is quite different than facilitating a regular improv workshop where people are there by their own free will. Mm-hmm. But it's so rewarding because you're doing you're flag waving for improv, because if they have a positive experience, then they're more likely going to check out an improv show or come to classes outside of work. And that happens a lot. I have great interest in teaching professionals, and a lot of people who come to me for regular classes come for professional reasons and stay for the love of improv. But it's great when you work with a client and then people approach you afterwards and go, hey, can I take classes in this, in improv? Can I take classes? And that's really nice because that expands our improv community.
Yeah. So this is the thing which brings you the biggest joy, or what's the thing from teaching non-improvisers?
Like I say, it's very rewarding to bring people on that journey and, give them confidence in their ability. And, that's very, very satisfying for me. There's someone I wrote about, a student that I wrote about that had quit her job because she had to do a presentation, very skilled in her specialist role. And she quit her job because she didn't want to do a presentation to the executive team, and then got a job in one of the big tech companies and had to do a presentation at their quarterly meeting. And I was like, oh, I don't want to quit this job. I really like it. And, took improv classes, and that was a goal of theirs. And you help them on that journey. You help them, be effective presenters. And that's so rewarding as a facilitator. And it's amazing, like, because, so with some of my work, I'm working with people very senior in organizations, and they have the same hang-ups, fears, development needs as anyone else. And it's great to be able to use improv as a tool to do that. It's so rewarding.
Awesome. I have a question about this. So one of the, or maybe even last question, what's the best thing about improv for you? What do you like most? Why are you in love with improv?
So many reasons. It's so liberating. We get to say and do things on stage we don't get to say and do in real life. I can be angry at somebody on stage. I can be in love with someone on stage, and I'm supported in those choices. It's so wonderful to do something where people say yes to your ideas all the time. That's so joyful. But I think it's fun. You know, it's playful and it's fun. That's probably the big one, is the playfulness and the fun. We're doing something that is fun, that we get to play with friends, and we get to do it as adults. You know, we're not supposed to play because we're adults. We're supposed to be mature, but we get to do that. And if something is fun, it's not work. You know, I never view any of my work as work. It's fun. I think the day it becomes work is the day you stop doing it. So I think that's the thing. I could give you a long list, Monica. The more I think about it, the bigger the list becomes. But
Oh my God, so lovely to talk to you,
and
Neil.
you,
I would love to meet you in person because it's such a long time we haven't seen each other, and
I
I really
know,
have good memories from all the festivals.
definitely.
Hopefully soon, maybe Ireland or somewhere else.
Yes, mask free and without social distancing. Hopefully, we'll have this. This will all go behind us in the time to come.
Yeah, but we already met on online
We did.
improv now
We
because
did.
Corona put us in some gyms and places. So that's
Exactly.
minimum that. I even would say that more than the last year. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
so let's take it positive.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. It was
No,
so
thank you.
lovely, so delightful, and thank you. And I really loved that talk.
Thank you.
And my last question is, would you like to play a scene together? Which
Sure.
okay.
So here's what I suggest. Rather than giving a suggestion, cover your camera and I'll
Okay.
cover mine so that
Like,
we'll see. Yeah. And so now you'll see a black screen or you'll see a dark screen.
I can.
And then when we take our fingers off, that's when the scene starts.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. You don't look happy. You are happy.
I, I thought I'm happy.
I thought you were happy as well. You are happy. I mean,
I thought I'm happy, and I feel happy.
I feel wonderful. This is great.
And you look happy, and you look happy and wonderful. Like you are
You
for sure
think?
happy.
You think I look happy and wonderful? This is such a relief.
Yeah.
You look happy. For a moment, I thought you weren't happy. I mean,
No,
this is the best news.
happy. I had today just like one of my best days. Like,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I was so worried. I was so worried that you wouldn't be happy, and now you're happy, and that makes me so happy.
but literally, I thought that you will be not happy, and when I see your face, like the smiley eyes, I really feel that there is this connection now.
I agree. I mean, what were we worrying for? This is so silly that we were worrying. I mean, if we had just said this up front, we wouldn't have had any of that stress. We didn't have to wait all that time, and we could have just come straight to the happy point.
Yeah, what makes this worst is that we make these expectations, that somebody will judge us, that we are not who we are, or that we feel different. And we could just be ourselves. And I feel like that now, that I'm just feeling good with you in this room.
Me too. We are going to be the best grave diggers there are. And all the worrying about it was pointless. We finally found something that makes us happy, and that is our jobs. I'm so glad that as a husband and wife that we have found a profession that we can both embrace.
I'm so happy that I can sit and have it next to you at my desk.
I love it. I mean, think about the joy we're going to bring so many people when we bury their loved ones. I mean, it's going to be so great. They're going to see we're happy. They're going to see how wonderful we feel, and they're going to feel good about it. That's what we need. We need to show people that death is a happiness.
Yeah, I thought actually that how about bringing our children here to the office?
That is a great idea. I mean, what do funerals need more of anyway?
Yeah.
Children.
Children and happiness, like happy family, like full family.
I mean, I don't want to cry in front of my children. Who would want to cry in front of their children? Not. This is why you and I just connected all those years ago. It's just, we get it.
Yeah.
We get it. I can't believe we were worried about this.
And I think, like if we have children with us here, we can't be sad, and we need to be happy, and they will see a happy family. So maybe they will get affected, and then the whole office gets happiness.
We could encourage people. We could bring your kids to funeral day. Like, we can do a demo day of what a funeral with us is like. Say, bring the whole family, bring the kids. We'll have a barbecue, things like that, and just show that, we're going to revolutionize the funeral business. That dying does not have to be such a morbid experience.
I feel actually that this is pretty positive, because you get the like everyone will die. There's no exception, right? So.
Exactly. Everyone will die. I mean, just no different than you're going to go to sleep tonight and you're going to wake up tomorrow. You're also going to die. Do you wake up in the morning and go, oh God, I've just woken up? Nobody does that. Do you go to bed? Do you go, oh God, I have to go to bed? No, you don't. So why do we go to funerals and go, oh God, I have to die, or I'm going to bury somebody? Stop being so negative. Turn that frown upside down. When you're lowering someone into the earth, you're lifting your spirits.
I think that if everyone would teach children from really small age, like from being young, to learn about death, nobody would be afraid and scared. You're
so right. Funerals will be the next birthday.
Yeah. Wow. So.
Right. Let's go bury my dad.
Yeah. Happy day.
And scene.